Hey guys, good evening. Just obviously had a great rally, a little bittersweet because we're celebrating, of course, the president's campaign and all these wonderful voters here in Pennsylvania, but also remembering Corey Compratori and the two other folks who were shot. I talked to Corey's family, very sad, obviously, but also I think extremely optimistic about the future of the country and the way that their husband's death, their father's death, their brother's death has been so meaningful to so many people. So really emotional day for all of us on the campaign. And obviously we've got 31 days to win Pennsylvania, and I think we're going to do it. So happy to take a few questions, and we'll just, we'll try to take as many as we can.
What
Sir.
was your first thoughts coming here today to Butler, the return of where President Trump had the attempted assassination? What was going on in your mind when you first walked on the stage?
Yeah, so I wasn't here the first rally where the president was shot. There was actually some talk of coming because that Saturday morning I met with the president in Mar-a-Lago about potentially becoming his running mate. It was the first time I'd ever talked to him about it, in fact. And then, he flew up here. I went back home to Ohio. I talked to him right before he went on stage. And then, of course, 30 minutes later, we start hearing the news. So to me, frankly, surreal to connect this moment to what could have been an extraordinarily tragic day for the entire country. And I was going to finish answering the question if I could, but just really, really profoundly moving to be here because look, I mean, you talk to his family, his sisters talk about being, part of a unit where they feel like they're missing something core in their family. You talk to his daughters, they're incredibly sad. Obviously, it was just 8 weeks ago. So I think it's just a very, very emotional moment for me to see it, to connect it to the real people who have been affected by it. But then, of course, to have, how many tens of thousands of people here driving home this message that we've got to win Pennsylvania. And I think we're going to do exactly that.
So where were you that day? How did you find out about the president being shot?
Well, I was with the president at Mar-a-Lago that Saturday morning. I flew back home to Ohio. I was actually taking my kids mini golfing, and that's where we were. I actually had a mini golf stick in my hand, a putter, and somebody texted me and said the president's been shot. I sort of started hearing from a lot of friends, and of course, at the beginning, I feared the worst because you see the video. He goes down. You think maybe that's the end of his life. Thank God he was okay, but unfortunately, Corey wasn't. Right, so. You take the good with the bad, you take the bitter with the sweet. I think a lot of people were very excited, but we're also certainly in a period of mourning for this. I mean, look, this is a member of the president's movement. This is a guy who wanted to come to this event, who was very excited to be here, who actually told his family that he thought he might get called on stage. And you realize that, when that assassin's bullet rang out, it really did attack the most fundamental right of Americans, which is the right to vote and the right to participate in their political process. Corey was taken from us permanently, and I think one of the ways that we're trying to remember him is just to run this campaign, run it well, and take our message out to the voters of Pennsylvania and everywhere else.
What did you guys talk about?
Good.
Sir, Governor Kemp, Governor McMaster, Governor Lee in Tennessee, and Governor Youngkin, who we were with the other day, they
Yeah.
praised the federal response to Hurricane Helene. They said it's been swift and they've been provided a lot
Yeah.
of resources. Here on stage, you said that it's been a man-made disaster that the Biden administration
Yeah.
handled it well. What evidence do you have to say that these governors might not? Why
Well, look, I actually agree with the governors that in the way that, look, the governors have said the FEMA response, the people that they've been dealing with at the ground level of FEMA have been responsive to their concerns. But look, there were not enough resources that were pre-stationed, especially in Western North Carolina. It's one of the reasons why the catastrophe has been so bad. But we are still now we are a week into this, and the 82nd Airborne still only has about half, as I understand it, of the troops they want there actually there. There's no command and control. I talked with Elon Musk about this earlier. And look, I don't think there's anything malign going on, but there's a lot of basic bureaucratic incompetence that is delaying the delivery of communications resources, of food, of water, of medicine. That is what I'm so frustrated by. It's not the on-the-ground folks with FEMA who I think are doing everything that they can. It's the leadership of our country that I think is letting a lot of bureaucratic incompetence delay the delivery of necessary resources.
Senator, you have
Sure.
You also said too that the focus of this campaign is on immigration, the economy, inflation.
Yeah.
How do you earn the trust of voters when the focus is on that, and when you have Trump and other members of the GOP pushing inconsistent messaging on the issue?
Well, look, I don't think our campaign messaging has been inconsistent at all. On the abortion question, the president's been very clear that he wants Georgia to make Georgia's laws, California to make California's laws, and to respect the fact that we kind of have a messy democracy where sometimes different states are going to make different determinations on these issues. But we also, I think, look, I mean, I know a lot of young women who have had abortions. I certainly saw it in my community growing up. And I think that for those of us who want to protect the vulnerable, what we have to do is create more options for young people, for young families to choose life to begin with. Very often, what motivates the decision to terminate a pregnancy is a feeling that people have no other options, that is the only real option available to them. And my point is that for those of us who, again, want to protect vulnerable life in this country, we've got to earn people's trust back and show them that we can provide them more options. Maybe they're worried about medical expenses. That's something we can focus on. Maybe they're worried about housing costs, affording a place to live for them and their new family. That's something that we can address. Maybe they're worried about childcare. We have to understand as Republicans that we have lost a lot of people's trust on this issue. And I think both President Trump and I want us to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. And I think that if we can earn the people's trust on being pro-family, that will take a massive step forward in making it easier to raise a family, making it easier to choose life. Yeah.
You said, and the former president said that Kamala Harris only offered $750
Yeah.
to affected folks there.
Sure.
But the rest of her speech went on to outline how tens of thousands of dollars would come from FEMA to offer to those individuals. Is it dishonest to frame it as just $750 and there's more in the way of money?
Well, look, I certainly hope that FEMA and the federal government will give additional resources to people. They deserve it. But I don't think it's at all a problem to point out that it's insulting for people who have lost their homes and nearly everything to have somebody swoop in and talk about $750 like that's a big sum of money. I certainly hope more comes from it, but the criticism of Kamala Harris there is have some self-awareness, recognize that people have lost everything, and don't just drop in and say $750 like it's a big deal. Promise people that you're going to help them rebuild. I think a lot of this is a failure of leadership. It's a failure of showing up. It's a failure of, I'm going to show up in your town after you've lost everything and promise you $750, or a hurricane has destroyed your entire community and the president's going to sit on a beach and Kamala Harris is going to do a San Francisco fundraiser. That is the opposite of leadership. I think so much when I've visited obviously southwestern Virginia, which was terribly affected by the storms, a lot of what people want is just a recognition that their leaders actually care for them. When you won't even cancel a fundraiser to show up, it doesn't suggest that you care about people.
Talk about the Hispanic right.
So let's just say you have a Republican voter who's supporting Harris. What would you say to them to convince them to support the Trump candidate instead? And additionally, I guess we have 30 days left in the campaign. Who are the voters you think that are up for grabs at this point you can convince to vote for Trump?
Well, look, I think there's a whole diversity of voters that are up for grabs. They come from every corner of our country and every community. I mean, my pitch to Republicans, but also to Democrats and independents is, look, you don't have to agree with everything I say. You don't have to agree with everything that Donald Trump says. But if you compare their record of accomplishment, Donald Trump had lower prices, he had rising take-home pay, he had reasonable inflation, and he had a secure southern border. He had those things by pursuing some common sense policies. Kamala Harris has run away from every position she's ever held because when she actually got the chance to govern, those positions led to higher food prices, higher housing prices, higher energy prices, and she also opened wide the American southern border. The country can do so much better with better leadership, and unlike most elections, you actually have a contrast between Kamala Harris's record and Donald Trump's record. Donald Trump's record was one that we're proud of. He's got the plans to get the country back on track, and I think the American dream is accessible. It really is accessible to people, but only if we fix the broken leadership of Kamala Harris. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Well, look, I adore the First Lady. I think she did a great job. I think she's a very impressive person and is a great wife to the once and future President of the United States. She's got her opinions, right? And I think it's totally reasonable for her to express those opinions. They're not the same opinions that I might have. They're not the same opinions as every Republican might have. But Melania Trump has the right to express her viewpoint. The way that I take it is as a very smart, accomplished person expressing her views on the issue of the day, and she's entitled to do that.
Can we talk about the
Well, I certainly hope it's not. But look, One of the things that you've seen is an astonishing willingness from Democratic leadership in this country to talk about giving the right to vote to millions upon millions of illegal aliens. If you take millions of people who shouldn't be here and give them the right to vote, that fundamentally deprives American citizens of their constitutional right to vote. And so I think what Elon is saying is that if we don't get this right and get our border right and stop giving away, or at least offering to give away, the right to vote to millions of people who don't have the legal right to be here, then I really do think it'll permanently transform this country in a very negative way.
Senator Hassan.
Yeah.
Yes or no, would a Trump Vance administration defund Planned Parenthood? And then second, why is it that the campaign feels that the assassination attempts have proceeded from the headline?
Sorry, repeat those, Phil. We have very, very loud opposition. Very good opposition, but
Yeah. Well, look, Phil, on the second question, I unfortunately don't think it's that complicated. A lot of members of the press, including I'm sure people who are asking me questions, they don't like Donald Trump very much, and so I think that there's been an effort to memory hole what was not just a terrible assassination attempt, but I think showed some real character from Donald Trump to stand up, to raise his fist in defiance, but then to call for national unity. I think you saw, as Elon said, courage under fire is the best test of a man's character, and I think we saw Donald Trump display courage under fire in a very profound way. I wish the media covered more for it, or covered it more. I don't know why they don't. I think it's a disgrace, and I do think that a lot of our folks in the press should ask themselves, if a similar thing had happened, God forbid, to Kamala Harris, would they be covering it in the same way? I think most honest reporters would say, no, they wouldn't be covering it. They'd be covering it in a much more focused, and they'd be talking about it a lot more. On the question of defunding Planned Parenthood, look, I mean, our view is we don't think that taxpayers should fund late-term abortions. That has been a consistent view of the Trump campaign the first time around. It will remain a consistent view.
Senator.
We'll do one more.
Elon Musk and Lena Khan in the administration together.
Well, I certainly think they'd bring a diversity of perspectives. I agree with both of them on some issues. I disagree with them both on some issues. But one thing that Elon and I, and Donald Trump and I think, you know, Bobby Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, Nikki Haley, Brian Kemp, what unites the Republican ticket is a sense that we just got to give it back to common sense, and it's okay to disagree with each other. You can have strong disagreements on issues. We want to facilitate that disagreement because we think the best idea will rise to the top. Kamala Harris is really into censorship because she fundamentally doesn't believe in the right of Americans to speak their mind and to say what they believe. I think it's the biggest threat to democracy in America in 2024 is Kamala Harris's weird obsession with censorship. See y'all. Have a good night.